I'm talking about the media agency as a business, for both the better and for the worse. And what's the prognosis?
Well, I think this is true of most countries, and certainly true of most countries in Mindshare anyway, is that we've seen the business in 14 years become, from what was essentially at the beginning a transactional business, whether we liked it or not at the time, and we debated it a lot at the time. The fact is that 14 years ago, largely speaking, we were a transactional business. And I think now, when we're at our best in markets, we're a much, much, much broader business than that. Both strategically, but also in all sorts of other sort of specialist services that we have developed. I would say the main change in what we do, therefore, is the breadth of the business that we provide for clients. I think the two things that have mainly pushed that change are the two things that I referred to at the beginning of my talk, which are the change in technology, which has radically altered all of the communication channels available to us, and therefore made our role more important. Because if you think about it, the more complicated it is out there, the more important we become. Number one, and number two, I guess goes back to geography, where during that period of 14 years, even more than then, the drift of the global marketing dollars from country to country, from market to market, has increased. But I would say, overall, and I'd like to think that that we all, all the agencies had a role to play in this, because we all had similar strategies. That what we've done is basically find ourselves or force ourselves further up the hierarchy than we were, because frankly when we started it was much more of a transactional business than it is now.
Yeah, Patrick.
Yeah, my name is Patrick. I'm from Lintus. Thanks, Mr. Dominic, for sharing some good insights. I think that will help us to be future ready by 2016. But one of the things which really bothered me was on partner collaboration. We hear a lot of media owners talking and stating that large agencies particularly force unreasonable prices, and there's a huge drop in price which they expect. So you have the seller who's want to kind of derive maximum value of that opportunity, and you have the buyer on the other side who wants to get that opportunity at the least price. So how do you think, and where does partner collaboration would come in here? Do you want to share some examples?
Yeah, I mean, collaboration, it's not at the expense of price, if that's what you're driving at. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a market, isn't there? And people will pay what the market will sustain. And it's as simple as that. It's like any other market. But it goes back to your question, I think, then, which is that, I think we sometimes get confused, perhaps deliberately confused, between value and price. And I think, going back to the question of collaboration, it does require the media owners with the media agencies and the advertising agencies to really prove the value of a campaign or a vehicle in order to justify the price that's behind it. And I don't think we do enough of that. I think it's too much of a, in many countries of the world, it's too much of a haggling market, where you're just concerned with price. And I do blame is a strong word, but I do share the responsibility for that with, again, the procurement ethic that crept into our business partly as a consequence of the recession. And I think the reason I do that is because people in that profession value most highly the things that they can measure, right? And they tend to be remunerated on measurable KPIs only. And therefore, we got ourselves into a bit of a rut by concentrating on things which you could measure. And of course, the thing you can measure most accurately is the price of something. It's much more difficult to measure the value of something. And I think that's the rut that we have to get out of. And it goes back to the question about, research and how we, and how we actually do that. I think it is incumbent on all of us, including clients, perhaps especially clients, to find new ways of measuring value and less concentration simply on the price of something.
It's also that there are so many uncertainties that were painted for the future. How do you put a price on an uncertainty? You put a price on the basis of past performance usually, but you're not able to completely say what would happen in the future, particularly in a digital world and convergent world, the whole aspect of value would then be far more important than price, I would imagine, because you don't really have a benchmark to go by.
No, but that's why you need, going back to your second question, I think it was, that's why you need really smart people from different walks of life than we have in this room who are able to take a punt, have the freedom from the agency and the client to say, you know what, I think this new idea might well work, we should give it a try, and then not to get thrown off the cliff when it fails.
That's right. Naval, you had a question.
My question is in some ways related to what Nitin said in the morning, where he painted a very sort of broad picture of how consumer tastes are changing and how some parts of media might become irrelevant. Now, in media agencies specifically, you have people at the front line and also in the middle level. People who are servicing clients are largely involved every day, spending most time in buying share of voice and negotiating. That's what most of the time is spent on. How do you believe it is possible to get some of those people, because they are the champions at the front line, some of those people to sort of look at the big picture and dovetail their objectives into those? Because as Nitin said, a lot of the things that we are doing today, we might actually realize a few years down the line this is all irrelevant. It's all completely going waste. So how is it possible to get the people who are servicing the brands at the front line level, especially in media agencies, to look at the larger picture of the brand and integrate the objectives with what they're trying to achieve?
Well, I don't know why it wouldn't be possible. I think it's a question of two things, really. I think it's a question of getting the right talent, getting people in who have the ability to do that. And going back to the previous question, we think we've grown from a largely transactional type of business to a different kind of business which requires a different kind of talent. And I think certainly in the case of Mindshare, and I'm sure I speak for the other agencies in the room too, most of the recruiting we've done, especially at a senior level in the last 2 or 3 years, has been not from directly competitive agencies, but from clients and from research companies and from industries that have a stronger tradition in giving strategic advice. I think firstly it's a question of talent, and secondly I think it's a question of whatever you want to call it, data, information, research. I think again I refer back to what I said before. I think for us to avoid slipping down the pole again, we have to invest a lot of money in bespoke, tailor-made insights into clients and their brands. Because if we can't, as a media agency, if we can't bring some specialist knowledge or insight to a client's brand any better than the guy down the road who works for the PR company or the research company or the advertising agency, then we don't deserve to be around the big table. We deserve only to be at the small table, the children's table. I think if you want to be at the adults' table, then you have to invest in that kind of talent and that kind of knowledge to bring to the client. So I think you have to do those two things.
I think they're all saying there's a lot of re-engineering that we have to do. It's not just about giving us the right tools and resources, but there's a whole lot of re-engineering and introspection among ourselves that we will change and transform to meet the future. Ajay had a question. Ajay is from the Aditya Birla Group, which is a Mindshare client.
Thank you for warning me.
Just to take forward a client perspective of something Lynn asked earlier. Once upon a time, not too far back, we had a single agency, and it was felt specialization demanded there be two. So in agency 2016, is it going to remain at two, or each media is going to have a specialist agency? And if so, then what are the pros and cons from a client perspective?
No, I don't think so. I think media will always be under one house. I think it will be. I don't think we're going to see a return to the days where you have a sort of digital specialist and an at-home specialist and a print specialist and a TV specialist. And the reason why I say that is twofold really. Firstly, I think the distinction between those different kinds of media is blurring completely. So you can listen. I listen to my radio on the internet. So does that go to the internet department or the radio department? Well, the answer is you don't have departments. You have it all in one. So I think given that media now is delivered, messages are delivered across all different platforms, then I think it therefore it's logical that that all those platforms are looked after by the same agency. So I don't think we'll see a day where media gets sliced up into specialists again. But here's the big thing. I think that's why it requires I think the agencies of the future to be very, very integrated and not to be siloed, because you need to have that sort of cross-platform ability to study your brands and to give you the best possible advice back. And I don't think you can do that unless there's someone at the top, a trusted advisor to you, who will talk with a knowledge of all of the media channels and then be able to deliver it as one. The last thing you want, I would suggest, is to go to 6 different suppliers saying, where's my radio plan, where's my digital plan, where's my out-of-home plan, where's my... and I would go further than that. In the future, I would say you wouldn't want to go to someone and say, and by the way, where's my PR plan? And where's my customer relations plan? And where's my customer service plan? I wouldn't mind betting that in 5 years' time, you'll go to one person to ask for all of that.
So then that is the definition of full service again.
No,
it's just a new type of full service.
Well, no, because full service, and this is vocabulary getting in the way here, because full service in that context used to mean the advertising agencies whose main role was to produce advertising, and did lots of other stuff too. You could say it's inverting that model, but it's not recreating it.
All right. We just have time for one more question. Anyone? You?
Yes.
All right.
Hi, I'm Gitanjali. Just to get a summation of this and to take forward what Ajay was saying, we're really saying that we're moving from a strategic partner setup to an effective aggregator. And in that context, if one has to look at accountability and measurability, if that is what the marketer looks for, where does the buck stop? Does it stop with the aggregator? And therefore, does it require a sense of measurability metrics across each of the players? How does one tackle that piece?
Well, I wasn't using the word aggregator. I think aggregator has connotations of some sort of industrial process that goes on in the background. I wouldn't say aggregator. What I was talking about was integrator. I think it's a different thing. I mean, I'm talking about a role which looks at all the specialist services and channels that are out there and tries to make sense of them all on behalf of the client and deliver the optimum plan. I think an aggregator has connotations of something far more sort of industrial and much less sensitive than what I'm discussing. But if you assume that we're talking about an integrator, rather than an aggregator, then I think the buck still stops in each of those three desks, doesn't it? It stops at the desk of the client, of the specialist, and of the integrator. I think the challenge, therefore, given that there are 3 desks and 1 buck, is to figure out, going back to the question over here, how we find a way of measuring which piece worked and which piece didn't work. Because as, again, referring back to Nitin's, it wasn't in his speech actually, it was in the answer to one of the questions that was put to him. Every single person in his company meets their own individual KPIs, but the company fails. Well, how does that work? So I think the answer to that question is because he can't measure specifically what the output of the KPI was for each one. So it's very, very tricky. I mean, I'm thinking you've gone to the heart of it. It's really, really tricky to figure out which piece worked and which piece didn't. Really tough. But we have to try and find the metrics that allow us to do that.
Well, thank you very much. That was very, very insightful and useful. I'm sure lots of people here have taken away a lot of things from that talk. I certainly have. I think with the pace at which we're working, perhaps we weren't really even talking about 2016. Maybe a lot of these things have to be done by 2013. Well, even next year. We have to start now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Mr. Proctor.